I'm Haze Hartwig. This is Bamboo, Vancouver's property management and investment podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the show. Today I'm here with Robyn Lau from EXP Realty, and we're going to be discussing more towards the investment side today of the property management world. And let's see what you got to say for us today.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. So before we get into it, tell us a bit about you. What did you do before real estate?
Oh God. How much time do you have? I've been sort of a touch in a lot of industries. I've started my life in the legal world and did a bunch of years in that. And in my 30s, I created a tech company, and with the tech company, we sold it. And then I ended up getting into real estate because it's always been something that I was involved with personally, and felt that the knowledge I had brought through my life, through all my different experiences, sort of tied everything together. Because even when I was in the legal field, I went to school at night and did my design degree at BCIT. So I've got legal knowledge, design. As a kid, I loved architecture and totally wanted to get into that, but it wasn't something that could come together for me.
Yeah.
So like creating a company and running it and then doing it well so that it was actually something that could be tangibly sold. It was something that I brought into real estate as like, this is a business. It's not about being a salesperson.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about having the fancy car and the other nonsense that usually is associated with this industry.
And how do you actually bring something to the table? Yeah. What value do you have? That's for the public to understand, but it's also, do you actually have it? And can you back it up? And in the same token, as your own business model, how do you have a diversified business that keeps you going in any kind of market? And how do you stay in it? Well, you got to know the markets.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't do this part-time. Even I'm 24/7, 7 days a week, like all the time. And I still feel like I could duplicate me and still not know everything there is to know.
Yeah.
So when people do this part-time, it astounds me because you're not looking out for yourself in your business or for your consumers.
Yeah.
Because, oh God, I mean, even investing, like you say, hiring a property manager, people are like, I could do it myself. Well, great. You just lost $10,000 on a tenant that trashed your place, and now you're choked and said that your investment didn't do well and that it's your realtor's fault for picking you a crappy investment. But that's not the case.
Yeah.
Why aren't you willing to look at what you do as a business and understand that you need to pay for things to be a successful business, aka hire a property manager, walk away from it, use what you're charged as a tax deductible against the property and the profits? Well, now that's all good stuff. But do you get educated on that? Most of the time, not.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, the rules are always changing in that. So,
right?
That's a whole other story.
Much, right? But that's just it. There's so much.
Yeah.
I hate to use the phrase, but if you pull your head out of your ass and actually want to be successful at something, it takes time and it takes the effort to learn about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. So speaking with learning about it, let's get into this.
Sure.
I guess we'll start off with the main thing, like an overview on investing. Like we're looking at a high overview because obviously, as you touched on, there's a lot more than we can cover in a single podcast.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. I mean, even if you go into my website, and look me up, it tells a bit of my own story and my own history about when I started buying a house at 18.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's amazing, but I had nobody teach me anything.
Yeah.
So what I'm worth today could have been an entirely different story had I been educated, especially at that young age.
Yeah.
So how do you get into investments early? How do you do things? People are like, oh, I can't afford to buy. Well, you can, but you're not going to go into the market into a blue chip stock right away, you've got to go buy penny stocks. So where can you afford it? Where can you do something? Does the rental match what you're doing? Yeah, those are questions that you have to ask, but that's a great way to get in. So maybe you live in Vancouver, but why don't you go buy a place out in Chilliwack?
Yeah.
You're not going to live in it, put a tenant in it, and raise the equity over the years of holding, because real estate's not a short-term game.
Yeah, absolutely not. It's a lot of people get locked into that HGTV nonsense, and we're not living in Arizona, you know?
No. And the US, that's the other thing, is that too many people read, and I hate to say it, books like Robert Kiyosaki and some of these other guys. Well, that's an American system. First thing that people, when I ask them, do you understand the difference? And they're like, no.
What are a couple of them?
Economics, huge.
Yeah, like what are a couple like main points that you'd point out?
Number one thing that I would say is when you see the US economy going down and their interest rates are crazy, people are losing their homes.
Yeah. When
the interest rates are great, obviously house prices are up. But what we don't get here in Canada, because we're like, great, we'll sign in for a 25, 30-year amortization, but it'll be for 2, 3, 5, 7 years. In the US, if you get a mortgage, that's what you signed in for the life of the mortgage. So if you're getting a 2% interest rate on your mortgage, that's for 25, 30 years.
Just straight through.
You don't get renewed.
Interesting.
So I've got friends in the US that literally buy paper, because when they sell the house, they sell the mortgage. So now they're trading in paper and commodities. Like it's an actual tangible thing that they can trade. Where I've got these friends too that are like, why would I ever sell this property?
Yeah.
Because it's cheaper than borrowing money on a bad day. And if I can get rents and it's 2% and the cost of housing in the US at the time when it's tanked, I mean, yeah, it's a win-win-win.
Absolutely.
The other thing that people buy in the US without knowing, and it's really common, and I learned it from my parents' generation, was the fact that if you buy in the US, you really should look at having it registered under a trust or a numbered company, or getting advice from a lawyer on how to protect your asset. Because if you pass away, the US, because they do require you to file income tax returns by owning property in the US, they will then obviously have you on record. You've now passed away. Well, their estate law tax comes into play. Then the balance gets transferred to Canada. And guess what? Canada's estate tax law comes into play too.
So you get hit twice, eh?
So it's like, well, why wouldn't I buy something locally, put a tenant in it, generate cash, and then the cash from that, I'm going to go rent an Airbnb in 10 different cities in 10 years instead of having overhead and costs and everything else. It's balancing out the investment, right?
Yeah.
Where is it going to do me better, and where can I actually protect my asset better?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? Where it's a whole different ballgame when you hear of US companies coming in and they'll invest in Canada. Well, that's because they're already making margin on the dollar.
Yeah.
Companies can write it out,
right now, eh?
right? But companies can write it off and write it out under a corporate plan, whereas a single residential purchaser, you're in a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's just like those little things that you think about too. And if you buy something that you're in the States going, oh, I'm going to buy it and I'm going to flip it and I'm going to make it pretty. Do you know any contractors out there? Do you even know, like, if the neighborhood you're buying into didn't have like a shooting 2 blocks away 10 days ago? Right? Like I saw this great post on Instagram yesterday and it just struck me funny. It's like this old timer, like 1920 mansion is for sale for $1,000. Would you buy it? And it's in Syracuse, New York. Well, okay, renovation will be $500,000.
Yeah.
But the comments below it were from locals that knew the area. And they're like, that is a drug infested, horrible, like shit shack neighborhood that you're like, yeah, okay, thanks for the intel.
Right.
But that's the thing. How many investors and how many people that say, I want to get into something think that they know all the questions? They don't. You need to hire somebody that knows how to talk the talk and take you through the checklist. Not like, oh, I'll take you shopping.
Exactly right.
That's like asking somebody to go and take me shopping for clothes and they know nothing about my personality.
Yeah.
And they want me to wear pink. Like that would ever happen.
So as it goes for someone who is thinking about getting into the market, getting into investing, where would you suggest to start? Like, would you suggest to purchase one and just get your foot in the door and live in it to build that equity? Or would you suggest to try to bank up and purchase, because you need 20% down, of course? That's a little difficult to do in the Lower Mainland. So would you suggest to go that route, or to get one for yourself and build it up with you living in it currently? Or well, how would you get started?
Well, it goes back to my other conversation though, right? What's your budget? What are you actually capable? It's in this, especially the greater Vancouver area, cost of living is brutal.
Absolutely.
So how do you actually save money and afford to live here? You don't.
Yeah.
So a lot of the conversations I have with some of my young clients is, would you be willing to do a split investment with mom and dad right now? Because the house of mom and dad probably has hundreds, if not millions of dollars in equity sitting there. And mom and dad were never educated. Because my mom and dad, same thing. They got mortgage free. Yay, I'm done.
Yeah.
Okay, then you go to pension and it's like, holy, I got nothing to live on. Cost of living is brutal. I'm on old age. So I generally sit down with the whole family and say, look, how do we do this together? Because not only can we help your kids move forward with the equity that's in your place, because the tenants can help service the cost of the equity plus the mortgage. Or sometimes the parents have so much that they'll say to the kids, okay, we'll take out the equity on the house, but you need to service the credit line. We don't want to be responsible for any of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Instead of getting a loan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you can afford to buy, but the kids now go, okay, so then why would we buy a condo? Why would we buy a townhouse? Let's buy a house with a suite that my kids can now live in it.
Mm-hmm.
And the rental downstairs is covering the cost of the credit line.
Yeah, or at least taking a good bang out of it, right?
Right, big bang. But if you've got it and it's like, okay, you're living in the Tri-Cities, let's say, or in like Langley, a house like that is still going to be $1.3 million,
yeah,
$1.5 million, right? So when you're looking at that, okay, maybe you do what we know a like a blend. So you borrow from mom and dad, and then you go ahead and get your own so that you can live in it. Well, now it's like you're paying your own rent.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have parents that have anything, or they're like not even in the area, or they're from another country.
Yeah.
If that's the case, how much money do you actually have and how much have you saved? Then we need to go shopping in a neighborhood that you can actually buy. So it's like buying a penny stock. I've got clients that they live in Vancouver. They want the lifestyle of Vancouver. They want to not change their life, but they want to get in the market. Great. A few years ago, throw them into a place down in Chilliwack. You start looking at the economics. What's going out there? The brewery went out there. What does it do? Need for people for jobs. If there's a city that has a growth area, you're going to gain market. You're just going to gain market money. So put somebody out there. I put them out there. Sure enough, 5 years later, they've got 100,000 in their pocket that they wouldn't have had before, because that community grew. The value of that property grew. Timing was perfect. One of my guys ended up meeting somebody. She had done the same thing. Well, now they had, between the two of them, almost $250,000 to actually put into a home, which they did. And two of them qualifying together, tenant downstairs, helps pay their mortgage.
Yeah.
So it's used as a catalyst. It's used as a stepping tool. You can't always have what mom and dad have now without going through the steps. And
yeah, there's a lot of people. I think it's caused possibly from the internet in general. Like you click on Amazon, it drives tomorrow.
Yeah.
So people are not prone to having to do something to have to build that for 5, 6, 7 years and then have to get the final goal, right?
Yeah.
There's steps and yeah, it's strange to see, but a lot of people, I want to live here now. It's like, well, unfortunately we can't do it right now, but
yeah, it's interesting though too, because I think North America's really, really falls victim to the whole entire consumerism and we have enough closet space, so let's fill it.
Yeah.
Well, you're filling it with crap. And that's not an investment. You're either going to like throw it on Marketplace or somewhere else and sell it for $10 down the road, or just simply throw it in a bag and put it to Salvation Army.
Yeah.
That's crappy investing. So I'm trying to even end my conversation now lately. And it's applicable for me. I mean, I fell victim to it because I could afford to do stuff. But is it necessary? Do I pull stuff out that I've never used? So now my mindset is this: go European. And when I say that, it's like, if you look at European housing, they have one small closet. So the women will buy a great winter coat or a great casual coat and a couple pairs of pants and a couple shoes and boots, but they're good quality and they speak well. That's all they have. They don't have 10 of them. They only have a few, and that fills the closet. But it also, that's why they can afford to live, let's say in London or somewhere else that has high cost of living, because they're spending their money on other things than inconsequential, not getting anywhere like product that they're buying.
Yeah.
That's also why you could all of a sudden go, oh, I've got extra money at the end of the month. It's also the whole younger generation. The media pushes product so hard. What is the big difference? I'm sorry, like, I like nice things, but I don't need to walk around with some company's brand on my purse to say it's a great purse. And I'll have spent $5,000 or $10,000 on a bag that 6 months from now I'm going to be bored of. But I also throw it around. It's a tool to me. It's not a investment. But if people are buying $5,000, $10,000 purses or shoes or these ridiculous things, unless you've got this as extra money, it's not in your wheelhouse. You're supposed to live by what you can afford.
Yeah.
Don't try and you live at home with mom and dad, but you've got 4, like a Prada and a Louis Vuitton and all these bags in your closet. Well, good for you. You have nothing.
Yeah, fair enough, right?
But you could potentially have $50,000 sitting in the closet, or you could take that $50,000 and go and buy a condo and go and put a tenant in it if you can't afford the monthlies, but you can afford to get the mortgage on it and cover it through tenancy. Well, now you're making your way to be that person that can actually go and not even think twice about buying that purse.
Yeah.
So don't put the cart before the horse.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right?
Now, that's what you can say about the mortgages and that. I mean, most of the time, they won't cover the net, right?
No.
Meaning that it covers the mortgage, the strata fees, taxes, all that stuff. Yeah. So even with it not covering the net, do you think that it's okay to drag a bit, being that, you know, it will go up in price towards it?
Yeah, within reason, right?
Yeah, like what would you say is a reasonable amount? Like, is it just based on what you're comfortable with, or would you say there's a defined X percentage or something?
I think everybody's got their own comfort zone.
Yeah, of course.
Right? I mean, if you're inhibiting your ability to pay your own monthly bills and your visa is now going into defunct and you're paying 27 to 29% interest on money, well, that was a bad choice.
Yeah.
Because now you're actually way exceeding your ability to cover your investment costs.
Yeah.
A couple $100, you should be able to handle that, no problem. And you need to remember too, again, good taxable write-off.
Yeah.
Right? Shortfalls are okay. But to what level? It depends on your ability and it depends on your comfort level.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I would never want to pressure somebody. I have a way higher risk tolerance than somebody else does. Yeah. And I never put my risk tolerance pressure on anybody else. Mm-hmm. If you're comfortable with it, do it. If you're not, that's why when you meet with a great investor who will work through a portfolio for you or a financial advisor, they will give you questions that will then show them what your comfort tolerance is for low risk, high risk, medium, whatever. Are you in it for the long haul? Are you in it for a short play? You need to ask those questions. And even that's why you would work with a broker, a mortgage broker, versus a bank, right? Banks don't look out for you. They look out for their stockholders.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they look out for the board of directors.
Yeah.
So at the bank, they're not looking out for you. A mortgage broker is. Why? It's the word I teach everybody in my my circle or my client base or anything is, unless somebody has a vested interest in you, meaning that their livelihood relies on you succeeding, why would you ever work with them? The bank doesn't have a vested interest in you, but mortgage brokers do. And a mortgage broker will educate you on everything. They'll ask you when you're taking out a mortgage, or a good mortgage broker will. They'll ask you, what's your plan? Are you going to stay here for 5 years, or are you transferring out of province in 2 years or 3 years? Like, is your job got you going all over the place? Well, then let's only lock you into a 2-year mortgage or a 3, or let's put you into a 5 without a big penalty. So here's a better company for you. Here's a better lender. It's just all kinds of questions that have to be asked based on the client themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. You had earlier touched on where there's going to be growth, such as when you touched on the brewery being out in Chilliwack and that. For somebody who's looking to invest and be part of either a strata windup or a land assembly or anything like that, what would be some indicators that someone would look for in an investment to have a better shot at being part of that land assembly sometime down the road, instead of just sort of hoping that someone's coming?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great question, because for me, a lot of times people are like, how did you figure that out? Or how did you know that? Here are 3 letters for you. OCP. And what does it stand for? Official Community Plan. What's the city got in mind? The city, sometimes you can go back and they would have made their OCP that hasn't been changed 15 years ago. And then all of a sudden you'll see things rolling out. Well, that was thought about a long time ago.
Yeah.
So great thing. Real estate's a long-term play. Start following the cities, following the cities in their growth patterns. Like, take Coquitlam for a good example.
Burquitlam or Coquitlam?
Coquitlam.
Coquitlam, okay.
Well, Coquitlam as a whole. So the Burquitlam area.
Yeah, because that place is going off. It's
but if you're going up North Road, do people actually pay attention to the fact that the east side of North Road is Coquitlam? The west side is Burnaby.
Yeah.
Burnaby's only putting large density near the SkyTrain hubs.
Okay.
Coquitlam has put it down the entire corridor because it allows them to get their density that they want within the city for housing. It draws people in. It brings in the tax dollars. But what they've done, North Road is a straight transit hub for buses. Why aren't they saying, like, walk 1 block and then take the SkyTrain to where you're going to go?
Yeah. Where
Burnaby has a different approach to it. So Coquitlam is more proactive in the terms of our shortage for housing and on how they're approaching it. But if you were looking at it 5-10 years ago, North Road was only a couple towers.
Yeah.
It was only starting to get into play. Well, you look at it and go, oh man, all those old buildings sit on huge pieces of property because back in the day, 25, 30, 50 years ago, they wanted gardens. They wanted nice walking areas. So you look at that, you're not just buying the condo, you're actually buying the whole hunk of land because you're common property owners on this thing. So the density plus the build out plus whatever. So if you're looking at a long-term hold, sometimes these old buildings aren't a bad thing.
Okay.
It's the same with Burke Mountain. You could have gone up there 10, 15 years ago and bought all these old houses that were sitting on 1 acre, 2 acres that now have 9 to 12 houses per acre. Yeah. Okay, that's a pretty good investment. It's looking at what the official community plan says that we're going to blow out and build out.
Okay.
Look at Langley. Look at 208 and the whole Willoughby area.
Yeah. I mean,
that was farm pasture, right? Yeah. I mean, but that's also when developers are buying, a lot of the big builders, they've already got enough property in their portfolio for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
And so with them building, they're building on 20 years ago land costs. And that's why they can afford to work with the economy. And when you've got a downturn and an upswing, they're able to actually work with the interest rates and help people and give some bonuses and get them in because they're not about to collapse because they didn't buy the land too high. So it's a fine balance. Assemblies are always a super fine balance. But It's the same thing. Like, do you need to buy pre-sale of a brand new thing to make money? Or is it okay to buy the cheaper product that's 40, 50 years old that may need a little work, or maybe deciding that you're not going to do any work anymore in it, but you put a tenant in, you don't need to live in it, but hold it until it's ready to be bought out?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it goes, especially with the strata ones, it depends on how the building's been kept, of course. Right?
Totally. But those are the great ones. Like, even don't wait for it to be approached by a builder. Hire a realtor or somebody that knows what they're doing. I do assemblies all day long. Mm-hmm. So I'm called and brought in for consultation all the time. And for me, it's great because then I can say to them, you can actually be proactive and actually bring it to the market and bring your product to the table without anybody even knowing about you, which is great because most builders want to buy off-market properties. Mm-hmm. If you see a property and a building that has a sign on it, it's already been shopped. It's already been, expectations are too high. There's just unrealistic things. There's a lot behind it, but it's a lot of times people go, no thanks.
So you mean like when you see all those signs going up the block by the same realtor, bang, 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 across the way saying land assembly? It's probably already
somebody that's
missed the mark or something?
Somebody that's not in the know is what we'll just call it. I'll be nice. But it's the same thing like anything. Investments can be everywhere and anywhere. There are opportunities everywhere. I've got a huge desire that I wish people, specifically people that I work with, other agents, would get educated on product.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, a good example, leased products.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a leasehold property and people right away go, oh, no, thanks. People that are over 40 remember what happened with the native bans and how they changed the taxes and how it was, well, I never do that. Okay. The lawyers got involved. So all the new developments on native land, those are so ironclad in the consumer's favor. They're a great purchase. Yes, if you're looking at one that's only got 20 years left on the lease, that's not a good thing. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking at one that's got 99 years, that's way more than your lifespan, and it now gives affordability. But the other thing is, there's multiple levels of leaseholds. It's native, it's city-owned, Vancouver, False Creek. Look at on the south side of False Creek.
Oh yeah, and all of SFU basically.
All of SFU
as well.
UBC. You've got all this different types of lease. I mean, a lot of people forget that when Expo was done in 86, the north side of False Creek down opposite Granville Island, that little pocket at the end of Howe, around 1600, 1500 Howe, and Beach and that Hornby and all that other area down there, they all are like, there's a huge pocket of lease, but they're federal. And great one. I've got a building I've put clients in and I do the listings on. I've got clients that come in and I have to go through the whole education with the realtor as well as the consumer, because that, like 1600 Howe, great example. That building has over 65 years left in its lease, but it has a land buyback value. So today it's currently valued, let's say at 45 million just for the land. Yeah. Well, the government has to buy the land back. It's not just the unit. Like on the south side of False Creek, the city owned lease land, that you're only owning the unit. Yeah. You don't have land buyback value. It's a horrible lease. But you get into this one at 1600 Howe and a few of the others down along the same waterfront, land buyback value, and there's only 44 units in that building. You've now instantly got $1 million value on land to be bought out in addition to your square footage ownership. Yeah. And then if you're showing it registered and you're showing that it's been upgraded and you can keep on registering with the city, yes, your assessed value is higher, but you want that in these cases. But for me, I have said to people, if you want to really be a good investor, buy ones like that. Yeah. And create a trust in your family portfolio and let it ride for generations. Because if it's worth 45 million today, can you imagine in the 65 years when it goes to get bought out, 200, 300, 400 million plus whatever?
We can't make more land, right?
Exactly. But If you understand it, you can also leverage on that land.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation about how this money works. But yeah, there's some really good, and leased land is generally a certain percentage below market value on freehold properties.
Yes. Yeah. Generally speaking, it doesn't improve as much.
No, but if you've got some like these ones that have the land buyback value, they're actually, in my opinion, worth more money. But I can't sell it at that. I've got to sell it at what people perceive leasehold value. So there's a win because you're buying a product a couple $100,000 less than the ones across the street that are freehold.
Yeah, absolutely.
And most of these have better waterfront views anyway.
So yeah, speaking with the land assembly and strata windups and all that, we'll do them separately. But what does a land assembly look like? Like we'll do it from the owner's perspective. They're just hanging out at their house, knock on the door. So after that knock on the door, hey, do you want to sell your house? The neighbors 5 and 5 on both sides are.
Yeah.
What does it look like after that? On a high overview, obviously. We're not going to go straight in through the lawyers and everything.
No, but the first thing that you need to do is, as an agent, you need to actually know what the density and what can be rebuilt there. Mm. So that's part of your conversation, why you would even suggest to these people to sell and form a group and form an accumulation to bring value to a developer to buy 3, 4, or 5 houses. Mm-hmm. In knowing what can be built there, and it's the buildable and allowable versus, okay, today it's a detached house where if you've got 3 and I've got certain amount of square footage and I can now build townhouses or I can build a condo. That's what the sellable value is.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of back end research that goes into it. A lot of times, unfortunately, when some of these go on the market and they get 5 or 10 in a row, the reason that some builder representatives or agents like myself or others that do a lot of assemblies will come in and snatch it in 10 seconds mm-hmm. is because we know that the asking price is so undervalued.
Okay.
Because it wasn't properly assessed. So it's a great win because now you're buying the dirt at so much less and now your project has so much more viable profit to it. So yeah, I mean, I would talk to the homeowners individually to go through, have a conversation. And then after I get an agreeable yes, then I actually hold a group meeting and do a full information session about this is what it looks like. This is the steps we'll go through. It's not a short process. It's generally because the builders will want to come in and tie it up under contract, but they don't want to close for at least a year, mm-hmm. if not more sometimes, because you want to be able to go through rezoning without having to have all of that overhead paid for and just sitting there, because that can kill a project.
Yeah.
Most owners don't understand that. And you want to have a viable product and a project for the builder to buy you. Yeah. It's a handshake. It's a mutual understanding, we're going to call it. But yeah, you need to have this whole entire full communication. But the other great thing is that 90% of the time, you'll get a large, non-refundable, paid directly to the seller deposit, mm-hmm. which then allows a seller to pay out the mortgage if that's what they've got left. And they sit there free, or for that year that they're waiting to it actually close, or they can go ahead and leverage the equity they've got on it, use this non-refundable deposit, go buy another place.
Yeah.
Right? They may not necessarily have closed on their house, but they can go ahead and leverage what they've got, decide to move into their new one, put a tenant in this house, let it cover that credit line that you just used covering the equity to buy your new home, but you're buying in a lower market, doing all these things. There's a lot of variables involved, but there's a ton of success to it. A ton. Because generally, let's say if the house is worth $1 million on the regular market, and if they can go to a townhouse, mm-hmm. they'll probably get 1.2 or 1.3. Well, okay. That's a nice little lift for just having bought the right property.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people don't understand, though, is that when they bought the house 20 years ago, the neighbor across the street isn't in the new rezoning, and they got lucky that they did. Mm-hmm. So appreciate the lift. Don't start getting sort of greedy and presuming that because the developer is going to make so much money that in turn becomes going into your pocket. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we've seen with this economy shift right now there's a lot of builders that are struggling to hold on.
Yeah.
It's a hard place to be.
Yeah. Like with the assembly as well. I mean, do you find that you run into, say you have 5 places that are ready to go?
Yeah.
Is there usually like one that has this astronomical number, or like they start to compare to each other?
There's always
that, like,
always.
How do you handle?
It's social
this?
Dynamics. It's like a psychology. You're always going to have the more people involved, the more opinions you've got.
Yeah.
And the more presumption of knowledge. So you have to fight it all, but you have to literally give the people the time and educate them. If you educate them, you can walk them through any process.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of saying, I appreciate where you stand. Here's where it really sits.
Yeah. They just straight on the numbers, basically.
Straight on the numbers. I can't make this up. I'm telling you the legit truth. Now it's up to you to absorb it. And if you can appreciate it and understand it, great. And if you can't, well, then maybe I'm going to ask you to go get legal consultation and let a lawyer walk through this. Nobody's messing with you. It's fully legit. We'll give the lawyer all of the information we've got. They can pay for some secondary advice, and a lot of times that helps.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, you had mentioned when we were drinking a couple whiskeys a while ago that analyzing an investment isn't just the numbers.
No.
What do you want to elaborate on that on air now?
Remind me part of the conversation.
I don't recall what else. You'd said that there's more to it than just the numbers. I just wanted to...
God, you're stumping me right now.
We'll come back to it.
Okay.
So with the strata windup, which is essentially the equivalent of the land assembly, but going vertical, is there any differences between that one since, you're dealing with a bunch of condos, say you can build a bigger tower on there, or one with an outdoor pool, for instance, that's sort of wasted space that you could put building on theoretically.
Density, right?
Yeah.
If the lot size is the lot size, that's what you're looking at. You're not looking at if there was a pool or a garden, a courtyard, or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of properties over in Coquitlam near Coquitlam Center that are great buys, in my opinion, mm-hmm. because they have large outdoor parking lots, mm-hmm. as well as large courtyards. And you look at it and they may have done 3 or 4 buildings at the time, 30, 40 years ago, and did no underground parking. So they've got these monster parking lots. Well, now everything goes underground parking.
Yeah.
So that parking lot that you're looking at is probably able, just alone, the parking lot is able to do a tower.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of people are stunned right now. Here's a good example. Over at the corner of Lougheed and Westwood. Johnson. Sorry.
Yeah,
right near Coquitlam Center.
Yeah.
Across where the Chevy dealership was.
Mm-hmm. That
got bought out. Marcon is doing a development there. They also bought the back properties as well. And people are now stunned at how much is going in there, because Marcon, through that piece of property, can do 9 towers.
Wow. Because
you're looking at lot size. People go, well, it used to house like 300 trucks. Yeah, but look at the size of that parking lot. So it's also back foliage, everything else. But a lot of times, too, people don't understand either. We look deeper than just the surface.
Yeah.
We have to look at the underground area. So here's a project you and I talked about years ago, just off of North Road in Lougheed.
Yeah, Village Del Ponte.
Village Del Ponte. Huge piece of property. Not so great. Why? Lots of water masses going through it. Mm-hmm. So now you've got fisheries involved. Now you've got the federal waterworks. You've got all these things you've got to contain with. And can you actually contain them and put them underground and not harm the economy, the ecology?
Yeah.
And can you deal with it in such a way? But there's also rules. Like my house that I live in, I've got water going through it. I've got a creek. It's beautiful. It's great. When they built my house, you could build within 25, 30 feet of the creek side.
Yeah.
Now, the new rules with federal and the fisheries and everybody else, you can't build within 100 feet of it. So if you're looking at it, well, guess what? My whole neighborhood has this creek running through, and I'll tell you, probably 20 houses will be lifted off of that plan if that was to be done today.
Yeah.
So you look at Village del Ponte, not such a great piece to buy when you're working out how many units you're buying out versus usable versus not usable land.
Yeah.
Where you go behind it, and I can't remember the complex right now. I've got clients in there.
I know the one you're talking about. It's all the low rises there. I can't remember the name right now.
And it's absolutely a phenomenal piece. And from their project, they've got outdoor parking spots. The complex is huge. I mean, you can get lost walking down those hallways. It's so big because they did do it as one big piece. I think there's like 1,200 units in this place.
Yeah.
So I think it sits on over 10, 15 acres.
So that might be a good one for someone to purchase and hold on to, like you were saying, yeah?
Yeah, huge, which is why I put a couple of my guys in there.
Yeah. But
it's also got a walkway straight up to Lougheed, which is across the street from SkyTrain. Completely justifies towers. Yeah. That's the thing that other people don't understand either. It's called what I call the puddle effect. Okay. So you've got SkyTrain and they want greatest density because they're looking at, okay, if we've got SkyTrain and transit ability, you now have the ability to have no vehicles. So if we have no vehicles, we could do a portion of these towers with no parking stalls. So maybe you only have to do 2 or 3 stories of underground parking, but you can have 3 times the amount of units you used to because we're supplying it with SkyTrain Transit. Okay. From there, though, you go a block off. Well, now you're only to a 6 to 8 story condo. Yeah. Now you go another block off of there, and now you're only down to townhouses. Go 1 or 2 blocks further, well, now you're back to single detached, where people think, oh, there's a SkyTrain 4-5 blocks from my place, but you might not be in that puddle. Yeah. So there's a zone where the density is really, really deep, and then it goes rippling outward.
So you think that maybe it might be a good idea to start buying around, say, Fraser Highway, where they're planning the SkyTrain
100%. 100%. Yeah. Watch anywhere where they're talking about LRT. A lot of people don't know that LRT is light rail transit, like light rapid transit. And it's what we do call SkyTrain here, but it's also can be very, they're looking at new options, even on the island. The island is getting LRT. Okay. So they're doing, and it will go from the ferries through to the airport, through to Saanich, into Victoria. It'll jump over, it'll go Langford, it'll go through the island. Amazing. You're now put that in. You're taking away a ton of rebuild of roads to supply the density and the infrastructure and the repair and everything else by putting LRT in there. Tourism, people, they can come and go. They get on the ferry by walking on. They can now get to downtown Victoria without having to rent a car or take another bus. And it's just really proactive thinking. So yeah, if you see LRT or any kind of proposal, it's a great place to buy. It's the same thing a lot of people don't think about either, which I wish I would have a good 20-something years ago. The minute, like in Port Coquitlam or in Burnaby, when they put the Costco's in. Costco spends over $1 million in feasibilities, which nowadays is nothing. Yeah. But I think it's actually up to $2 or $3 million for their feasibility studies. So does Walmart. Okay. You hear word that Walmart or Costco's coming in, buy.
Yes, I was also told that Starbucks is a good one to follow.
They're a good one to follow too.
Or McDonald's, because McDonald's is actually
they go density.
They're more of a real estate than they are a hamburger company.
That's all they are.
Crazy.
Didn't you hear the speech that the founder of McDonald's did at university over in somewhere in the States? He was giving a lecture. One of the big universities, like I don't
like Yale or something.
Yale or whatever. Funny you said that. That's the one I was going to say. But he was giving this lecture and he said to the kids in the audience, he's like, so what do you think I do for business? And people are like, you sell French fries, you sell hamburgers, you sell blah, 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 Happy Meals, blah, blah. And he's like, no, not at all. He's like, that's only a portion of my business. And he goes, that's actually just the side of it. Yeah. He goes, I buy land. He goes, every single solitary one of my McDonald's, I own the land on it.
Yeah.
Across the world. He's the largest landowner. Well, back in the day, he was one of the largest landowners there is, because it's a bigger picture.
Yeah.
It's what this whole entire conversation has been today.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, for anybody thinking about getting into that, let's keep it to Lower Mainland, Greater Vancouver, Fraser Valley. Where would be a couple of pockets you would suggest for someone to poke around a bit? I mean, you obviously don't have to give the cow away. We will have your contact information in the description so they can call you. But where would be like a couple that you'd say like, hey, maybe poke around here a little bit or look there first?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for sure. You already mentioned it. The Cloverdale, Langley, where the transit's going through. Great place and great time to buy. It's a no-brainer. It's just one of those things, and that area and that neighborhood is expanding big time.
Yeah.
You also have to look out along even at the outskirts of Langley. Walnut Grove is super close to the freeway, and across the street they've put the rapid double-decker buses to be able to get downtown. Okay, there. They added the Golden Years Bridge. You look at cities that are actually easy to deal with as well in terms of growth with developers. Mm-hmm. Some cities are more proactive than others, and some are like, we all know which cities they are, but you want to look at where the city's putting a lot of money into infrastructure and conversation. Tri-Cities out Pitt Meadows to Maple Ridge, they're putting the LRT, they're going to expand the SkyTrain further constantly. Get in it. Might be 5-10 years from now, but if you can get into a house along the line, great. Amazing. The one thing that I will say is that a lot of people think I'll never be able to afford if you and your friends are sitting around and there's 5 of you and each of you has 20 grand, do a numbered company, put it into a share pocket. Mm-hmm. Each of you has 1/5 of the house. Go and buy a house together. Do it as a joint venture. Do it as a creative thing. Get yourself in. There's so much opportunity in BC alone. Yeah, we've got a lot of hiccups and a lot of issues on some stuff. But in the same token, there's so much opportunity here versus anywhere else across Canada. Yeah. We're always the pick. When prices drop other places, we do a tiny little blip.
Yeah.
And it takes a considerable time other places across Canada. And I'll have you look at stats and stuff across the prairie provinces. You buy in for $100,000 on a little prairie house and think, hey, I can afford it. Go to sell it 10, 15, 20 years from now, you'll get 120. Yeah.
So it doesn't have that lift
it doesn't have that same return on your investment. It just doesn't, because it's just, what are the economics in that area and what's the growth? We became in Vancouver one of the top 10 places in the world to live for a reason.
Yeah.
We don't have some of the same economic way outs that other places do.
Okay, cool.
So,
well, I think we're getting pretty close to what we've got there for today. Just, you have anything else that you'd like to add?
Oh, I think I talked a lot.
No worries.
There's a lot there.
If someone's trying to get a hold of you to looking for more information or anything like that, obviously we'll have all your contact in the description, but how would they find you? What's the best way?
You can call me. My phone, it's out there, 604-306-3915. Unfortunately for me, yes, it's always on. But I do have a parameter that I step out of business and have a balance to my life.
Yep.
But I'm pretty easy to reach. Or you can find me on my website, and it's Robyn with a Y, ROBYNLAU.com. And yeah, all my information's there, my story's there, my bit of information about everything's there.
Great.
Or yeah, two easiest places.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. If you've made it this far, we really appreciate it. Be sure to like and subscribe so that you'll be up to date with when we have new episodes every second Thursday. And this has been Bamboo, Vancouver's investment and property management podcast.